This is Rogers TV.
Good morning. On behalf of Mayor Jim Watson, the Ottawa Board of Trade, and the Ottawa Business Journal, welcome to the Mayor's Breakfast for March 2021. I'm Michael Curran from the Ottawa Business Journal. This March episode of the Mayor's Breakfast will continue the discussion around gender equity in recognition of International Women's Day. In just a few minutes, I'll speak with my co-host, Su-Ling Ching, the President and CEO of the Ottawa Board of Trade. Su-Ling will bring us up to date on the board's priorities and its projects. Next comes Mayor Jim Watson, who will provide his regular and important update from Ottawa City Hall. And our two special guests this morning will be Catherine Clark, local media personality and entrepreneur. Catherine will use all of her political savvy to interview well-known former federal politician Lisa Raitt. You will remember Lisa as a federal cabinet minister, the deputy leader of the opposition, and also the deputy leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. I promise you it will be an enlightening discussion. As we kick off today's show, let's recognize some of the great organizations that sponsor this speaker series. First up is our lead sponsor, Hydro Ottawa. Next is the Commissionaires Ottawa, the Westin Ottawa, Algonquin College, La Cité, Rogers Communications, RBC, Enbridge, Oakwood Designers and Builders, Royal LePage Commercial, Capital Office Interiors and Steelcase, the Ottawa Senators Hockey Club, and finally the Centurion Conference and Event Center. A big thank you to all of these sponsors. And now a message from this morning's presenting sponsor, La Cité. Here is the college's President and CEO, Lise Bourgeois. Over to you, Lise.
Bonjour à toutes et à tous. Je suis Lise Bourgeois, President and CEO of Collège La Cité. I am really delighted to join you this morning at the Mayor's Breakfast to share my thoughts on an issue that's dear to me, the role and the contributions of women in our society. Of all times and in all fields, women have changed our world, whether as workers, inventors, mothers, educators, business owners, politicians, or leaders within an organization or in their communities. Thanks to their boldness, they have contributed to the evolution of our society. The resilience and determination of women despite the She session is a demonstration of their ongoing endeavors and extraordinary commitment to equality. And that is why I am proud to see the incredible achievements and the strong leadership of women around me. Whether they are students, teachers, colleagues, or partners, there is always a place for women to make their voices heard at La Cité. A quality education for women is fundamental to transform our communities, strengthen our economy, and reduce inequality. We need to address and eliminate barriers that can prevent women from accessing high-quality training programs. For example, Collège La Cité is proud to offer the Women's Economic Security Program since 2006. Thanks to this program, low-income women can access a one-year tuition-free program to develop their skills and increase their financial security. And this is the kind of program that is essential to help women reach their full potential. At La Cité, we strongly believe in empowering women and encouraging them to pursue successful careers in all sectors, including non-traditional sectors. We are pleased to count an increasing number of female students in skilled trades, emergency services, and technical engineering programs. At La Cité, we are committed to creating an environment that embraces equity, diversity, and inclusion. We can all play a role in implementing tangible and lasting actions for gender equality in our society. By recognizing women's achievements in all sectors, we are paving the way for a new generation to achieve gender equality. At La Cité, we believe that everyone has the right to achieve their dreams. So I say, ladies, dare to be bold. Thank you. Merci.
Thank you, Lise. We appreciate the support and important role that La Cité is playing in our city and region. Now it's time to welcome my partner in producing this event, the President and CEO of the Ottawa Board of Trade, Su-Ling Cheng. Welcome, Su-Ling.
Thank you, Michael. Good morning.
How are you doing?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm doing quite well. I'm happy that spring is here.
That's right. Something to look forward to.
So listen, Su-Ling, we're going to do this regular segment to make sure that people are up to date with what's happening at the Ottawa Board of Trade. And the first thing I wanted to ask you about is, in fact, the theme for this morning, which is gender equity. Earlier this month, we celebrated International Women's Day. In Ottawa, I think we've created a week, and now we are in this broadcast creating a month, and rightly so. It's an important topic. But tell me, on a more serious note, why gender equity is an important issue for the Ottawa Board of Trade.
Well, because, Michael, women in leadership, women contributing to society, to the workplace, and to community level decision making is an important part of community prosperity and the economy. And so what we know is that women are underrepresented. There's some inequity in opportunities for leadership and inequity in compensation, and also in access to capital for entrepreneurs. And through this pandemic, especially, that has been even more revealed as there has been a disproportionate burden placed upon women for many reasons, traditional women's employment sectors, how women access capital as entrepreneurs, and also childcare. So it's something that we really need to be aware of as we start to plan for a rebound, that we are conscious that it's not taking a step back, but that we find a way to move it forward.
I think the Ontario Chamber has done a little bit of research on this topic, and it's clear, Su-Ling, that in the pandemic, women unfortunately have borne the brunt of a lot of the pressure and the economic setbacks. Yes,
absolutely. And so we have some recommendations moving forward that we'll continue to work on through the Ontario Chamber and our partners. And then at the Board of Trade and in our partnership with you and our events, we'll continue to look for ways to highlight how we can all be involved in the solution.
So speaking of recommendations, Su-Ling, Ottawa, of course, went back into a red zone last week, which was unfortunate news. The Ottawa Board of Trade was very quick to give some recommendations to Premier Ford. What did the Board of Trade recommend?
Well, we put forward a letter, Michael, in partnership with RGA and Acobia, and we asked for them to consider changing the caps on some businesses to percentage of capacity, and to make those percentages equal across all businesses. And we further asked them to stick to their commitment to give proper notice to our businesses. So we put that forward and it was successful. They did make some changes. But in addition to that, we also put forward a letter in partnership with other chambers of commerce across Ontario, asking for additional changes to the framework, and we're calling it the Responsible Business Protocol. And basically what we're asking for is for there to be more targeted approach to whether we close businesses or leave them open based on their responsibility and their adherence to protocols, as opposed to which sector they're in or which region they're in. And so we're hopeful that the government will continue to look at ways to refine the framework, because even as we roll out the vaccines, which everyone is very hopeful for, there will still be quite some time that we need to maintain these safety protocols. And what we really need is for us to be able to operate our businesses while living with COVID and until we get back to normal.
Yeah, I think it makes complete sense. The pandemic is evolving, and the regulations, right, Su-Ling, need to evolve, and they're very common sense recommendations you're putting forward.
Thank you.
Let me just go to our third topic for today, and that involves your strategic plan. When we last spoke in February, you referenced that the Board of Trade was getting underway with a bit of a rethink of its mission and purpose. That work continues, but one of the important topics for the Board of Trade will be this concept of city building. And OBJ and the Board of Trade are just putting the finishing touches on an event on April April 30th, which will be called the City Building Summit. Tell us why city building you think is an important topic, and maybe a bit of a sneak peek on what the City Building Summit might bring.
Sure. So we're really excited about it. And I think the city building is defined as the process of creating a prosperous or a thriving city. And so all of those things that are important to create a thriving city, and that's exactly what we need for successful recovery and to move forward Ottawa to its fullest potential. So we have a great lineup of speakers who are experts in this field. We're going to be engaging some local leaders in some robust conversations about what our priorities should be and how we can work together. So we're very hopeful that we have a great a turnout and a lot of engagement for this summit, and we will use it to build on what our priorities are for the rest of the year and moving forward.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to releasing the full concept of the City Building Summit. Of course, people can continue to watch ottawabot.ca in the event section to get some more information and hopefully register. Well, that's all the time we have for this month's update. Suling, thank you for joining us again, and thanks for all the good work that you and your staff and the board are doing to support local business.
Thank you, Michael.
It's now my pleasure to welcome our host, His Worship Mayor Jim Watson, to provide an important update from City Hall. Over to you, Mayor Watson.
Good morning, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. Je vous souhaite la bienvenue à ce petit déjeuner virtuel du maire ce matin. I want to welcome everyone to this virtual Mayor's Breakfast. Thank you to our partners, the Ottawa Business Journal and the Ottawa Baord of Trade, and everyone who has assisted in setting up this event virtually. Earlier this month, we celebrated International Women's Day. I'm pleased that our guest of honor, the Honourable Lisa Raitt, Vice Chair of Global Investment Banking at CIBC, and a former Cabinet Minister, will be joined by Catherine Clark, President of Catherine Clark Communications, for a feature discussion later this morning. We look forward to hearing from these strong leaders, but before we do, I wanted to expand a little further on International Women's Day. I hope some of you watching today had the chance to catch my annual International Women's Day celebration, which aired on Rogers on March 8th. Councillor Teresa Kavanagh and our newest councillor, Catherine Kitts from Cumberland, and myself were joined by Dr. Vera Etches, our Medical Officer of Health, who has done a tremendous job of leading us through this pandemic. Her strong voice, concern for our residents, and advocacy for our city has been truly exceptional. During the broadcast, I announced that the City of Ottawa signed the Electricity Human Resources Canada Leadership Accord on Gender Diversity. This accord is a public commitment by the City of Ottawa to promote gender diversity within our organization. We look forward to taking action on the commitments of the accord, which align with our commitments of the Women and Gender Equity Strategy, as well as our Diversity and Inclusion Corporate Plan. The Women and Gender Equity Strategy, a first for our city, confirms Council's commitment to advancing equity and inclusion so that everyone, regardless of their gender, age, abilities, religion, race, or income, can fully take part in all aspects of life in Ottawa. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the City for All Women Initiative, COWI, who co-chaired the working group formed of more than 15 community organizations. I'd also like to thank the many residents who participated in the consultations which began in 2019. Now, before I introduce you to today's guest of honor, I wanted to take a moment to say that we are making steady progress with our COVID-19 vaccine rollout. We're doing good work with vaccinating our most high-risk residents, and once we receive increased vaccine supply, we'll gradually start to move to more and more residents in different age groups. We're heading in the right direction. I want to remind everyone that we need to continue to be patient. This is an evolving situation, and I encourage everyone to visit ottawa.ca and ottawapublichealth.ca for the most up-to-date information. It's now my pleasure to introduce today's guest speaker, the Honourable Lisa Raitt. She is currently the Vice Chair of Global Investments Banking for CIBC Capital Markets, focusing on senior client coverage and business development with the clients in the energy, infrastructure, and industrial sectors. After being elected to the House of Commons in 2008, Ms. Raitt was the Deputy Leader of the Official Opposition and of the Conservative Party of Canada. And Lisa, of course, is joined by Catherine Clark, a well-known name and face in the City of Ottawa. As mentioned, she is the President of Catherine Clark Communications and Special Advisor to Syntec Strategic, providing communications counsel to individuals, institutions, and corporations. She is also a nationally respected broadcaster, MC, and co-founder of The Honest Talk, a popular new podcast featuring frank discussions with notable women. Deeply committed to community service, Catherine writes the Giving Back column for Ottawa at Home magazine and serves on the board of CARE Canada, CARE International in Kenya, and the Writers' Trust of Canada, whose board she chairs. Over to you.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen. What a delight to be here with all of you for this edition of the Mayor's Breakfast Series. It's focused, of course, on gender and equity issues. You know, when I was a kid, International Women's Day on March 8th really was just one day, and then slowly it became a week-long celebration. And you know, I have to say I'm really quite delighted that we focus on the achievements of women globally, but also the challenges that we face all month long. And I can't tell you how privileged I feel to have the opportunity to speak with Lisa Raitt today, a woman who has navigated the highs and the lows of life with intelligence and dignity and authenticity. And Lisa, thank you for being the guest today.
Oh, thanks for having me, Catherine. That's a lovely introduction. And hello to everybody. And I'm delighted to be part of the Mayor Serve. You know, I live in Milton, but I always think that the mayor is my mayor too, from Ottawa.
He would love that. I'm pretty sure that you could always count yourself as an honorary citizen of Ottawa. You've spent a lot of your life here.
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Well, and you know, people who are watching today would, of course, remember the political aspect of your career. I mean, you sat for many years around the cabinet table, holding very high portfolios and making important policy decisions. But you had a career before that. You have a career after that. You were trained as a lawyer. I thought it was really important to note that you were the first female harbor master of a Canadian port. That's pretty cool. You were deputy leader of the Conservative Party. Now you're vice chair of global investment banking at CIBC. And as I thought about all of these positions you've held, I also thought back to your childhood as a little girl growing up in Cape Breton. And I wondered, is this what you anticipated out of your life when you were a little girl?
No. Catherine, I didn't even know what investment banking was. I was pretty clear on what, I still don't know if I do. I was pretty clear on what politics was, because if you're in Cape Breton, you talk politics. Politics is a very universal topic. Everybody understands it. My grandfather was involved in local politics, so I understood that. So I kind of could see myself in that position. But you often become what other people tell you you're suited for. And throughout my entire life, I have been noted as being smart or quick. And as a result, they would always say, well, you're going to be a politician, because I was opinionated as well. And I did debate. So I almost feel like I got pushed in that direction, in the sense that I was never held back from being part of wanting to be in politics. So it would make a lot of sense. It's my mother's birthday, and I called her on her birthday. And, you know, I oftentimes think about what she is thinking. You know, she had me when she was 21. She was not married, and her grandparents, her parents, adopted me. And I often wonder if she goes back to think about what it was like to be carrying me and making the decision to carry me and everything that goes along with that. And, you know, I hope she has a little bit of pride of the fact that I have accomplished stuff in my life, and I have nothing but gratefulness to her for giving me the opportunity to be able to do that. You know, she gave me up to her parents for a better life, and I certainly have attained it.
So, Lisa, I wanted to follow up on that, because I had not learned until last year, in fact, that the woman that you thought was your mother was in fact your grandmother, and your mother was your sister, Can you
Yeah.
talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So growing up, obviously I could have done the math to figure out that it would have been pretty much impossible for my grandmother to have me. She had already had 6 kids. She was 50 years old. So the concept of me being her naturally, I would have figured it out eventually. But when they came to me, not only did I gain an understanding on the maternal side, but also on the paternal side, right? I just suddenly now presented in my crucial teen years with the concept that half of my DNA is coming from a family that I've never met before, that I don't know. But here's the key. Everybody in town knew. Like, I was the last person to find out that this was the reality in a lot of cases. My only regret is that I didn't get to know them better. I didn't have enough time. I'm very much like my paternal grandmother. I don't have a wonderful relationship with my birth father. He's still alive. He's in Cape Breton, but it's strained. I just didn't get the opportunity or the chance to get to know him growing up. But my birth mother and I, and her husband and their kids, it is very, very close family. And we are like a unit, for lack of a better word. I called my mother, as I said, on her birthday yesterday. And I often think about, what does she think about everything that's happened? I know she has great pride, but she also starts to cry every time she starts talking about it.
That's a total mom thing to do.
I know. Yeah, that's true. But I get my strength, my wit, and my sharpness, both good or bad sharpness, from her, without a question. She's a tough chick.
Yeah, and you'd have to be tough. I mean, the fact of the matter is that that kind of a revelation at any age is big news. But when you're 16 years old and you're just trying to figure out in general who you are, to find out that you're not who you thought you were, your parents aren't who you thought they were, that could have had a devastating impact on you. Did you feel anger or sorrow, or what emotions were you experiencing?
Numb, just completely numb. I just started compartmentalizing, which is not a healthy way of dealing with matters. But one thing I've always dwelt on is the fact that this was a fact of life. It's not anybody's fault. And just for me to move on. But I do also have this complete sense in my life, probably as a result of the way I was brought up, is that there's no safety net for me. I am me. I don't have a lot to fall back on, and as a result, I'm quite individualistic, and I'm quite. I guess I can make up my mind and be a bit bullheaded, I suppose. But I do have a very keen grasp on the fact that I have to provide for myself and my family, and as a result, I don't take huge risk. But as well, I don't suffer fools, and I don't suffer injustice.
Do you still feel that way? Is that still how you live your life?
Yeah, very much so. No question about it. And I guess what's interesting about turning 50 and getting to know yourself more outside of the crush of being in politics, you have a lot more time to reflect. What I'm realizing is that I do live my life that way, and it's okay to let go of a little bit of control. And quite frankly, nothing like a diagnosis of young onset Alzheimer's in your spouse to throw that massive curveball at you in terms of letting go of control. Yeah.
So I mean, that's a part of you that Canadians have come to know recently as well, that you are in a real caregiver position now, because your husband, Bruce, really is a young guy, and he now is very deeply affected by young onset Alzheimer's. But he's not the only one who's affected, because it affects you profoundly. It affects your family. You've been public about this, but his condition is also not getting better. What has this been like for you, especially during a pandemic?
Yeah, again, I've had the luxury of being able to reflect on this cerebrally a little bit more, because Bruce has been in the hospital since January 1st of this year. I had to call 911 because it was apparent that he was going to injure me. And as well, I was worried that he was going to injure my 16-year-old, should my 16-year-old want to intervene in Bruce's angry outburst that happened on New Year's Day. So I've been able to look back on the last 6 years since the diagnosis, and I'm a lot more reflective of it. And the impact has been significant. I mean, we went from being a couple that went out a lot, traveled a lot, to being very insular, staying very close to home. I really protected him in social situations because I didn't want him to be embarrassed, because he would struggle with speech and following conversations. And as a result, we declined a lot. I also cut back on my duties as a member of parliament. I really was able to I did as little as I could in order to still do the job competently, in my view. Others would say you still were working every day, but I knew that I diverted a lot of the energy that I used to put in to be a member of parliament into care of Bruce and care of my family. And not just care, I was experiencing the moments, because I knew the moments were going to be gone. And eventually you run out of those moments. And I remember telling my staff once, they were saying, but Lisa, you really need to go. It was after I was a minister when the diagnosis came. So I was never a minister in this situation. But I remember my staff saying, you really should go to this community event this Saturday night, and it's really important. And it was not in my riding, it was in somebody else's riding. And I said to them, I said, I can count the number of Saturday nights I'm going to have with my husband on my hands. I can count them. So no, I'm not giving up a Saturday night. I'm going to sit at home and watch a movie with him. And that kind of drove my whole worldview for the last 6 years. Good or bad, that's the way it has been. And the other aspect of it is, I think in the past year and a half, I found myself in a situation that I would counsel others to get out of. And I'm really surprised how long I allowed myself to be in a situation where there was imminent danger in the house from a stronger, taller, heavier partner than I had with severe cognitive disability decline. And I let it go too long. I know that I did. And I look back on that. So part of what I am trying to do now is get my head around how to communicate with families who are just receiving diagnosis, so that they can understand my lived experience and maybe learn and make their own decisions on how to go.
Is that why you're being so public?
It is. And the second reason why is, as you know, because you know public policy extremely well, until the public understands that there's a problem, it's hard for us to provide solutions as political that are going to be saleable and accessible and right. And I don't think there's a great understanding in the Canadian public about the challenges with young onset Alzheimer's specifically. And I got a platform, Catherine. You asked me for interviews, so I'm going to take the opportunity to let you know what's going on in my mind. So yeah, I think that's where my head is now, as much as I can, because care of Bruce comes first.
I think this is something that a lot of women in particular struggle with.
Yeah.
The situation you've described is almost a mirror image of a situation of someone that I'm very close to, whose spouse is in a similar position, and it was in the end the threat of violence, and it had gone on so long because of a cognitive impairment that you know, her spouse had to be put in care as well. Yeah. And as women, we tend to just say, this is my job. I love this person. I've committed to caring for this person. I am this person's spouse or mother, or whatever the case may be. What do you say to other women who may have let something go on too long? What do they need to hear from you to feel that it's okay to take that step?
That you should not be relying upon luck to be the reason why you're still alive. You know, I read this past weekend of a death in a part of the country. I'm not going to say where because I don't know the business of the people involved. But when I see an article where a 73-year-old man has strangled his 70-year-old wife of 50 years, and they had never had any domestic problems, they had never had any issues between them, and you knew that the man had a diagnosis of dementia, you do wonder whether or not this was something that was caused by dementia. And I don't want people to be that statistic, and you need to take it extremely seriously. When I explained these symptoms to Bruce's psychiatrist, his geriatric psychiatrist, when it happened in the summer, I was told, well, let's make sure we get you this PDF, this sheet of advice on what to do in this situation. And the situation was about how to defend myself and how to remove weapons from the house. And I thought, that's all. I didn't think it was odd at the time, Catherine, but my God, I look back on it now and I think that is really an odd prescription to give to a family that's in trouble. What should happen is there should be a belief, number one, of what is happening in the house and how dangerous it is, and not waiting to see what happens if. Let's see what happens if. I think I only called 911. I've called 911 twice, once in the summer and once on January 1st. I called 911 on January 1st because it looked as if Bruce was going to hurt my son. But for that, I may not have called them. I may have just sucked it up. So I'm here to say to people who may be not only in the position, but maybe in the position of providing advice to somebody else going through this, that there is no shame in asking for help. And that once you see the help that your spouse or your partner receives in a hospital, you realize you couldn't do it all. The other day, they had to take blood from Bruce and they needed 7 attendants to do it. They had to hold him down with 5 people and 2 people to take the blood. How could I have possibly handled a situation like that in the house by myself? I can't. And when I say it out loud, it makes complete sense to you out there. But for those who are kind of in the whirlpool, just trying to survive day to day, they don't see it as something terrible, and they're waiting for something to happen. And that's a dangerous situation. We have to do better.
So what do we need to do better? I mean, what do we need to do to ensure that women caregivers have access to the support they need?
I think it has to be short of a 911 call. Making a 911 call is a pretty big commitment of resources. And it certainly brings attention to the house. So when I made the 911 call, a fire truck shows up, an ambulance shows up, and 2 police cars show up, all on a sleepy little country road here in Milton, Ontario, that got everybody's attention, and 9 people attended. And it was when I watched the officers and the first responders, how they approached Bruce with such care and deliberation for their own safety, I thought, I'm really doing this wrong. I mean, what they're doing makes a whole lot of sense. And that's exactly how things should be managed. So what I think should happen is that there's got to be an interim step somewhere between being given a piece of paper telling you to hide the knives in the house and calling 911 so that the entire force shows up because they know that somebody inside the house has Alzheimer's and could be dangerous. There's got to be an intermediate step. And currently there isn't. I didn't have an intermediate step to call into. Sometimes a local community will have an offshoot of the police services that will attend for mental health issues. But this wasn't a mental health issue. This was an issue where somebody with a real cognitive disease needs medical intervention, pharmaceutical intervention, and help and care in the hospital. So that's something in between. That's what's needed.
I'm so sorry that you're going through this, Lisa, but
thanks.
The fact that you're sharing your story, every time you post something, every time you speak publicly about it, you see the responses that you get, and it clearly this is an experience that so many people across the country are facing on one level or another, and you're really shedding light on it. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And more money for research.
Mm-hmm.
Let's cure this disease.
You talked a little bit earlier about, sorry, Lisa, about not being a risk taker, but you chose a career in politics that involves a fair amount of risk. So what happened there? Why did you decide to get into politics? I know that people had always told you growing up, you should really consider this, but as a woman who doesn't necessarily really love to take big risks, that was a big one.
I calculated the risk. I did a spreadsheet, or I did a chart, what happens if I run? Yeah, I did. I'll tell you what was in it. What happens if I run? And I run, and here are the outcomes. I win, the party loses. I win, the party wins. I lose, the party loses. I lose, the party wins. And there was only one really bad situation. That would be I lose and the party loses. And on the first go round, I won, party won, became a minister. The second go around, I did the analysis. I won, party won majority, really good. Third time I went around, I won, party lost, opposition. Wasn't terrible. I had some time at home. And then the fourth one was I did not win and the party did not win. And that ended up with me being unemployed, but it worked out. So, but I'm glad I got that last one on the last try, not on the first try. Yeah. But I did. I calculated the risk. I took a look at what it meant, where I would end up if I could get a job, because it's always about jobs for me. I need to make sure I have a job. And each time I did the analysis, that's where I would end up on my decision point. So I take very calculated risks, even going with CIBC, right? The question was, do I strike out on my own? Do I sit on boards, or do I get a real job? Guess what I did? I went from the most, I think, safe job in the country, being in government, to working for a bank, which is another safe job in the country. And it makes a lot of sense that I calculate these risks and I take the gamble that I feel I can deal with within my world to make sure that everybody is still taken care of.
That's so interesting, because I think, Lisa, that's really reflective of how a lot of women approach the decisions that they make in their lives too. So if I look at my own example, I knew I had a choice, like you did, of striking out on my own or taking a job that provided me safety and security and a level salary. Because I have a husband who has those things, I knew I had the flexibility to take a risk. But in your case, and for a lot of women, there isn't that flexibility. It's about the decision you make. And that decision is based on, how am I going to take care of my kids? How am I going to pay for an education? How am I going to put food on the table? So the fact that you take those calculated, well thought out risks, it's very interesting.
It is, but it's what I find fascinating is 25 years ago, I won a scholarship to go and be somebody who studied how barristers work in England. So I was a new lawyer and I got to walk around. Now, in the UK, the system is different. You have solicitors, which do the paperwork, and you have barristers that go and argue in front of judges. Barristers aren't guaranteed salary. You have to negotiate a fee with your client, and then it's a transaction from the time in which you appear in court. So it's not like you're making money in a salary. You actually, you eat what you kill kind of thing, much like a consultant. So I watched that and I could see from there why that kind of work only attracted people who had a high risk tolerance, people who understood the payoff associated with it, and not a lot of women, because you want to have a salary. You need to have the ability to know that you got a salary coming in. And now I fast forward in my life to investment banking, where compensation as well is a salary. However, the better you do, the better you're paid. And I can see that not being as an attractive, attractive career for a lot of women. And proof is in the pudding. There's not a lot of women in investment banking. Is there a solution to that? Those are just observations. But, do you take a job where you have a guaranteed salary that's okay? Or do you take a job where you have a guaranteed salary that's not as great, but really big upside? And more men go into those roles where there's big upside and they're willing to take the gamble. I'm not willing to take that gamble.
Yeah, you're right, though. What is the solution? Because what you've described is something that you can find in all kinds of industries, right? Like, look at women in startups, women in tech.
Yeah.
That whole idea of basically you're starting with an almost zero salary and hoping that you're going to do well enough to either get a bonus or whatever the case may be. Or maybe if it's a startup, you might just fail outright and have nothing. Yep. So you can see why women who feel such a compelling need to ensure that others around them are safe and cared for, or themselves, that they just say, no, thank you. So it will be interesting as we move forward in a new global economy, especially post-pandemic, how we examine these kinds of issues and how we encourage women to, if not take the risk, then how do we look at the
how do you mitigate the risk? Right. How do you mitigate the risk for them? Exactly. Yeah. For me, I'm pretty sure that had Bruce been able-bodied and still an executive when I lost in 2019, I probably would have struck out on my own. Mm-hmm. But circumstances compel you to make choices. in certain situations. And that was my choice. I'm really happy. I love CIBC, and I actually like the social interaction. I'm far more social than I thought I would be as an independent consultant. But no, it's definitely an eye opener in terms of, analysis of risk as you go through your career and making that jump. And in law as well, how many women stayed on the partnership track, uncertain as to how well you were going to get compensated versus let's go and jump into something that is general counsel of a company because I know what I'm going to make and I know what my hours are going to be. And there's no shame in that. Like, those are decent choices to make for quality of life and for whatever is going to need it, what flexibility you need to have in order to have the life that you want to build.
You did lead the way in so many ways in terms of your political career. Just, you were a powerful force around the cabinet table, but you were also super authentic, and you were who you were. You had no airs. You never have, and yet it's not an easy job in any way, shape, or form, especially for a woman. And you must get women coming up to you all the time and saying, I'm considering it. What do you think? What do you tell them?
I have it down to a science now. What I
too.
tell them, well, in a way I do, because I think if you want to run, you should run, period. But you have to be aware of a couple of things. Number one, you're going to have to ask people for help. And that includes help in your campaign, but money. Are you comfortable asking people for money in order to fund you, in order to be elected? That's part of the process. No getting around it. The second thing then is, okay, fine, you're willing to ask for money. Can you authentically enunciate why you're running? Can you do the elevator pitch? Because you really need to think about what you're going to do. And then the third one is, do you know how to network and to find the people that you need to talk to in your community, to sound it out, to talk to about what their issues are, in order for you to make the decision that you're going to run, and then have them introduce you to other people as well. So if you can do those three things, then there really isn't anything that should hold you back from seeking the nomination or seeking the position that you think that you are well suited for, or fulfilling a dream that you've always had in terms of being in politics. There's ideology that's important, but as well, it's very workmanlike in getting these nominations, and you need to be able to use a skill set in order to get there. Nothing is going to be handed to you from any party, because these nominations are extremely valuable and well fought for.
It's also a business where, everyone always says you have to have a thick skin. I'm not entirely sure you have to have one. I think you just have to be willing to accept criticism and dismiss what you think is not helpful, and accept that which, you can change or you think makes sense. But boy, especially in this day and age, and especially as women, female politicians face a lot of backlash. How did you handle that?
Karen Oldfield is the former CEO of the Halifax Port Authority. She and I were both CEOs at the same time prior to my political life. And I was once complaining to her about a board issue. And I was complaining. And she said, it just sounds like they're giving you, advice. And I said, no, they're criticism. It's too much criticism. And she said, look, Lisa, criticism is a gift. You choose how you want to interpret it. Is it advice that's going to be helpful, or is it something you push away? So I'm smiling because I listened to exactly what you just said, Catherine, which is true. I mean, anybody's criticism is really their ham-fisted way of giving you advice. At least it should be from your perspective. And then you can choose how you want to deal with it. In terms of criticism, I'm fine. If you want to criticize me on policy, if you want to criticize the party that I belong to on policy, I'm going to meet you on the floor. I'm going to fight you over it. That's fine. I don't like the personal criticisms. I don't like the personal attacks. I don't like attacks based upon what I look like. I don't like attacks based upon, where I came from, those kinds of things. I don't enjoy those, but I also think that on social media, we've let it go really too far. Again, I'm back into the world of safety when the response to a complaint that you make that somebody is making you uncomfortable on social media because of their comments, that they're not severe enough because they haven't actually presented themselves in a physical way. It's only on social media. I get concerned about that because it's not a far shot to go from somebody really harassing you on social media to it happening in real life in an uncontrollable situation. So I understand the thick skin about criticism when it comes to your ideals. That's par for the course. You, quite frankly, should be expected to stand up for what you believe in. However, the personal stuff I don't enjoy, and that's why you have the block and the mute functions on social media. I do tend to ignore them now, unless they become dangerous, and then you report them.
Right. So you're with CIBC now. You're with a major global banking institution, and we're in still a pandemic, which everyone is hoping that we're going to see the light at the end of the tunnel real soon. Even though some days that feels a little shaky, you're not entirely sure. As they say, remember that saying, you're not sure if it's a light or a train. But a lot of studies have come out in the past 12 months, which have indicated how the pandemic has really had a devastating impact, particularly on women, and a financial impact, job losses, etc. What do you think needs to change as we think forward to a new world, a new way of looking at the economy post-pandemic?
I understand the statistics, and they're extremely troubling. I think it's important for us to dig underneath the statistics and not ascribe blame to people. There are women out there who are probably mid-career and probably mid to senior level who, when confronted with the issues of having two kids at home going to school, decided to take a step back in their career because they could afford to do it. They quantified their risks, they quantified what it meant to their family, and they made the choice, sometimes brave choice, to look after their family because they value that as more important. I think that is something that they should not be criticized for, but it is a reality of what happened when the kids and businesses were closed, that you ended up with these caregiving responsibilities where families made decisions on how they were going to be divvied up. And I think that's important to remember as we take a look at exactly where it went. So my concern as we come out of this pandemic is to make sure that not only the women that lost their jobs because of the businesses that were shut down and the types of businesses that were shut down, but to remember the women who took a step back, a pause, a breath in their career, and that they not be punished as a result of the fact that they did take less time in the office, or they took a little bit extra leave, or they didn't take on those big projects because they just knew I wasn't going to be able to handle having everything happening in the house. And that is a lot more harder to measure, but it's something that I believe that senior officials and folks in companies in the HR side really have to drill down and understand as to what decisions were made at what time. And the whole notion of, if I ever hear anybody saying that, well, she just couldn't cut it, my God, give me a break. You have no idea what you're talking about. This was unprecedented in terms of stress on families, absolutely unprecedented. Because the other side of all of this too is a lot of kids are struggling with this. It's not just about kids being home from school. It's about the fact that they've lost an entire year of their education, a very short time, when they're allowed to be kids, allowed to be involved in sports, allowed to have their outlets of creativity, and they just didn't get it. And families had to cope with that. So a lot of families just decided, okay, one parent is going to do more work outside the home in their office, in their basement, and the other parent is going to be handling the coalface and working with the kids. And that is definitely an honorable choice. And we should remember that those were honorable choices people made during this time, and they should not be punished as well. Although they may not be part of the statistics of who lost jobs, I don't want them to lose ground in their careers.
What do you think is next for you, Lisa?
Hey, I'm a former politician, Freedom 55, Catherine. Oh my God. That gold-plated MP pension. the real, no, I mean, I have a very sick husband. So I look out into the future and I see a bit of darkness. So I'm going to surround myself with friends and family and get myself ready for what is going to be coming in the coming years. So it's more of a preparing for battle time than anything else. So, but it's still enjoying the moments and the lives of my kids and my family. I have a deeper appreciation for connections, and I'm going to continue to do as best I can to keep them up. But I can tell you, politics is not in my future, at least in this horizon. So the mayor, you know what? Your job is safe for now.
You know, I'm so grateful to you for taking the time today, Lisa. I'm grateful to you for your candor, and I'm grateful to you for sharing your personal journey in such an open way, because you give strength to others by doing so. And even in those moments when you're feeling that the darkness is pressing in, I hope you remember that there are thousands of people across this country whom you've never met who are there with you in spirit and thinking of you. But thank you for being a part of this conversation. Boy, what a joy.
Well, I appreciate it. And you'll notice I was itching I have an itchy nose for some reason. And I'm always reminded of that adage from when I was growing up in Cape Breton. If you have an itchy nose, you're either telling a lie or you're going to kiss a fool. And I am not lying. I mean, this is my life. It's wide open. You can Google me. You're going to see it. So I don't know what fool I'm going to be kissing today, but it's probably going to be myself. But nonetheless, I apologize for all the nose scratching.
Maybe that can be for our next interview. We'll talk about which fool you ended up kissing.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of fools out there.
Okay, your options are wide. Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks.
Well, what a great conversation with Lisa Raitt. What a terrific person. And I'm going to throw things back now to Michael Curran for the rest of this event.
Welcome back. Thank you so much to Catherine and Lisa for that enlightened discussion around gender equity and other issues. We promised you a great conversation, and I think that's exactly what they delivered. Thank you so much to both of them for being part of this March show. To demonstrate our appreciation, a gift will be provided to Catherine and Lisa from Royal LePage Commercial, our speaker gift sponsor. I want to specifically thank Matt Jacques from Royal LePage for their continued support. Before we wrap up today's episode, I want to give you a little bit of an update from Ottawa Business Journal. First off, the spring issue of our news magazine, which is now quarterly, is just around the corner. It'll be out on the streets any day now. The cover story will be fastest growing companies. Which is a look at 10 of the fastest growing companies in Ottawa as measured by 3-year revenue growth. So these are tremendous companies that are experiencing incredible growth in the middle of a pandemic and economic crisis. I'm sure you'll love to read about them. Also, I wanted to point out that today is, in fact, the final day for nominations for the 2020 40 under 40 competition. This is a competition that dates back more than 20 years. We look for 40 of the young rising business stars, obviously people under the age of 40, and we look for business accomplishments, expertise, and community involvement. If you have an interest in submitting a nomination, you better be quick. But you can visit 40under40.ca. That's FORTY under40.ca. If you're looking to stay current on local business news, I encourage you to visit obj.ca on a daily basis. The website is updated with local business news on an ongoing basis from our reporters and editors. Also, I encourage you to consider subscribing to our weekday email newsletter, which is OBJ Today. So that comes out Monday to Friday and summarizes the big local news of the day. As we wrap up this morning, let's recognize our sponsors one more time. Our lead sponsor is Hydro Ottawa, the Commissionaires Ottawa, the Weston Ottawa, Algonquin College, La Cité, Rogers Communication, RBC, Enbridge, our global sponsor, Oakwood Designers and Builders, our speaker gift sponsor, Royal LePage Commercial, our coffee sponsor, Capital Office Interiors and Steelcase, and our door prize sponsor, the Ottawa Senators Hockey Club, Go Sens Go, and our caterers, the Centurion Conference and Event Center. The Mayor's Breakfast returns in April with another great speaker. We will feature Cameron Love, the President and CEO of Ottawa Hospital. Please watch ottawabot.ca for more details or visit obj.ca to register. A big thank you to Rogers TV, especially Gavin Lumsden and Dave Davies for all the help they give us in producing this show. On behalf of OBJ, the Board of Trade, and of course, Mayor Jim Watson, thank you for joining us. See you again soon in April. Bye-bye.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Ottawa's local shops, restaurants, and services are woven into the fabric of our city. We can all help them during these challenging times. Order from them online, purchase gift certificates to use later, order meals for takeout or delivery, send them messages of support on social media. Please do it today. Learn how at ottawa.ca/buylocal.
You're watching Rogers TV.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
My name is Matthew Rutledge. I'm a 60 scoop survivor, born in Red Lake. Was adopted from there to Toronto at the age of 4. A lot of our brothers and sisters, family members got separated from each other. That was the government's goal, to break that connection from brothers and sisters. Basically taking the Indian out of the child. Right now, they're still trying to find themselves. Originally, my birth name is Harvey Halverson. In my high school days, teens, I was trying to fit into society. I knew I was First Nations, but I didn't know who I was inside. I think later in life, I started that journey. I am proud, Anishinaabe man, who I am now. I love life, who I am.
Wednesdays at 7:30 p.m., it's the Rtv Quiz. Giovanni Petiti hosts a weekly trivia competition that lets you play from the comfort of your couch. Play along at home and challenge your friends. And don't forget to follow along on social media. Let us know who's top of trivia, and you can find yourself featured on a future episode.
Are you kidding me, folks?
The Rtv Quiz, Wednesday nights at 7:30 p.m. on Rogers TV or at rogerstv.com/RTV Quiz.
Just once in a while, at parties and stuff. If that's what your kid says, they'll probably also tell you that it's not a big deal. But that's no reason not to talk about it. You could